Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Anybody have a good story about weird or troubling things they found while searching a house or compound? Could be from a law enforcement officer or military, or whatever else if it's good enough. I'm a probation and parole officer who carries a sex offender caseload. Sex offenders and domestic violence offenders receive warrantless home searches at least every 90 days per policy. Most of the home searches are simple walkthroughs, but sometimes we have to be more thorough, especially if we know or strongly suspect something is off. I had a new officer with me, and it was his first time doing a real search of a residence. He had some puncture-proof gloves on at first, but took them off for some reason or another. Not a big deal because the guy we were dealing with wasn't a junkie, so getting AIDS needled was unlikely. Then he reached into the guy's sock drawer and grabbed 2 feces-covered toys with his bare hands, not realizing what they were until he had them out and had a good look at what he was holding. That was some funny shit. He had to go to the hospital because the sex offender had hepatitis and a host of STDs. Alternatively, several ghetto sex dungeons and a lot of illegal material. One memorable dungeon was the one done up like some shrine to a rhinestone cowboy singer, and the room was covered in portraits of the guy, and the dead center of the room was a bench. He was actually a good case, chill guy, and never caused any problems. But I still think he murders hookers in his spare time.
How do you get into your line of work? Education background? Military?
A pulse, mainly. A 4-year degree is a strict requirement in my state. If you work for probation and parole in any state where they have real power, and you aren't an absolute total coward, you will very quickly find opportunities to do a lot of cool stuff. In 7 years with my agency, I've gotten general instructor, so I could probably jump to any state agency without issue. Certification, all sorts of active shooter training that I could never imagine using at my job. I make decent money running the house arrest team for my county, lots of overtime and on-call pay. And while our policy is that we don't kick indoors, we come extremely close to it often. And if you get a reputation as enjoying absconder searches, you will get to arrest a lot of people. It is a surprisingly decent job, so long as you choose to make it one, and aren't a pathetic loser who lives behind your desk and calls someone else to handle every arrest that comes across. Don't even consider it in a state where POs are a local, county, or city-level position. There might be some exceptions, but you'll probably be pretty much powerless there, which means you bitch a lot and do nothing, then feel even worse when a judge lets your criminals loose again. That said, the paperwork is beyond heavy. You will spend a lot of time in court, and while it's generally not the hardest work in the world, your time management skills have to be good, because you are juggling a lot of appointments constantly. A lot of times we search a house because the sheriff department or local cops ask us to. In my state, we are sworn state Leo as parole officers, whereas in some states, parole officers are just glorified social workers. We work closely with local Leo because we don't have the time, manpower, or structure to investigate new crimes or offenses, but we have an absolutely massive amount of power over offenders, so we can leverage that against the ones that are actively screwing up. Case in point, we don't need warrants to search, and that means we don't need probable cause. We just have to articulate that a search is reasonably related to their supervision, and if they refuse, they can be immediately arrested, and the refusal can be the basis for a search warrant. Don't feel too bad about this because in the population we deal with, everything other than diversion-type sentenced offenders are already convicted of a crime, so there's no moral quandary here. Anyway, we went out on a guy the local sheriff department thought was involved in a murder. They didn't think he did it, but he had pawned some stuff that was stolen when the guy got killed, but wasn't ready to blow their load on the guy yet. He was a parolee, only out a month or so. He lived with his parents, an extremely autistic brother, and a very large parrot in a fairly nice house in a rural area. Anyway, he shared a bedroom with his brother, and they shared a closet. In the closet, we found normal stuff: clothes, old toys, odds and ends. However, we also found an ammo can with some 22s and 410s. Personally, in a case where it's probably just old shit or another residence, I typically just tell them to get rid of it, or to keep it in another person's room if they are non-violent, as even a misdemeanant probationer cannot have weapons. But this guy was involved with a homicide. The detective who was with us then called the ATF, who proceeded to tear down the guy's shed, dismantle his car, and knock several holes in the wall of his house. Anyway, we found some prescription pills that weren't his, and some paraphernalia, a bong and a grinder, some residue, which was enough to arrest him on. The parrot was screaming, the autistic brother was crying, and there were probably 20 uniformed law enforcement officers at this guy's house, all because of a few 22s and 410s he probably didn't even know he had. No funny ending or hook there, but he ended up pleading out. They threatened gun charges for the ammo, but it was weak as he shared a room with his brother. And he took a rap for selling a bunch of shit he stole from the dead guy. He did roll over on one of the guys who actually did kill the victim, and that guy crashed into a tree and died when they tried to arrest him.
Around 2008 and 2009, we found a hard drive filled with pirated porn and anime one time when detaining some guy that was hiding a bunch of AKs and M16s for some terrorists around Hebron. Since we had to hold the guy at our base for a few days before he was moved to a prison for trial, and we had some downtime after a successful arrest, we put up a TV in one tent and marathoned Cowboy Bebop with the dudes in my squad and the guy we arrested. I later talked to this dude and he pretty much introduced me to Evangelie and Ghost in the Shell. The guy was a total weeb nerd and his scumbag brother, that is a pretty notorious thief in the area, somehow pushed him to work for some terrorist group. The guy got some prison time but later opened an electronics store and was pretty successful. We later busted his brother moving stolen sneaker shoes in his truck, and apparently he was wanted for assisting some serious terrorist attack, so he got a lot of prison time and is still there now.
I have one good one from a deployment some years back. I apologize for the copy and paste from my own post history, which was written for non-military types. I was in Kandahar province a few years ago, flying Blackhawks. We were the only show in town, so we ran every mission set. LAOs, VIP, Medivac, ring routes, you name it. We did all kinds of swoopty things, but the only truly inexplicable story, the one that'll stick with me forever, is the ghost town of the Southern Pass. The thing about Kandahar is that it's the Afghani version of New Mexico. There's a couple cities, but it's mostly a vast expanse of nothing. While Kandahar airfield was mostly self-sufficient, we didn't have a lot of things like a clothing exchange where you trade out destroyed uniforms for serviceable ones. So we'd send one of our aircraft with a Chinook or two over to Bagram once a month for a supply run. My turn to make a trip to the big city came in early March. It's the rainy season, so weather can be a little dicey going over the mountains between Kandahar Airfield and Dalki, our one stop along the way. And while one Chinook was set up for a fat cow, nobody really liked the idea of setting down in a heavy insurgent region with no support and no recon to refuel 3 aircraft. So when the ceilings started dropping over our route of flight and the Chinooks were too heavy to try to go over, nobody was keen to turn around and find a safe place to refuel on the way back. Our PI saved us by finding a relatively low pass well to the south of our route, but would actually cut time and therefore fuel off our trip. The skies looked less ominous and the EDM showed nothing in the area, so the AMC called it and we turned south. Chinooks don't like close formations, so we were at about 15 disc separation when we entered the pass. We watched Chalk 1 skim the lowering clouds ahead of us as the ground rose up, funneling us ever closer to the ground. Even with our large separation, Chalk 3 told us they were starting to feel claustrophobic. Still, the pass grew narrower, so when the drizzle started turning around wasn't going to happen unless we came to a hover and pivoted in place. Gradually, we slowed more and more and grew closer together, until we're crawling at 40 knots and 50 feet. We were only 2 disc back from Chalk 1 when we turned the corner. and out of nowhere we were above a tiny stone village built into the pass. Mortared stone buildings hugged the impassably steep slopes on either side of us, and Chalk One whoboyed and pulled power hard to keep from plowing into the town's only road that ran straight down the center of the tight-packed valley. Chalk 3 heard us yelling over comms, thankfully, and kept their distance. And then things got weird. Like ghosts in the rain, dozens of people appeared in the street. Every single one a hunched, barefoot female in a black head-to-toe burqa. More women than could possibly live in an isolated mountain village of a dozen stone shacks, and not a single male or a goat horse or even a cart in sight. And like a single entity, they all turned towards us, straightened up and raised their arms ahead of them at shoulder height, like some bizarre ritual. We noped right out, clouds be damned. When we landed at Dalkey, we were greeted by the Special Forces detachment there, since we had to wait out the rain, and brought us food from their chow hall. They said we looked like we'd all seen a ghost. We told them the story. They showed us their maps, nothing there, only a note that the Bedouins avoid the area due to landslides. They left us alone until the rain lifted. On our way back the next day, we got ourselves approved for a flight plan deviation for reconnaissance purposes and headed out to find the valley. We were all a little on edge. I know for a fact that my other crew chief had a couple grenades primed and his weapon armed, but we weren't prepared for what we found. As we topped the rise and reached the coordinates, we were greeted by nothing. The strip of dirt road was there, still only a couple 100 meters long with a well near the end, but the town itself could have been gone for decades. No sign remained of the odd women or their homes, except for some crumbling foundations and flattened earth where buildings once stood. Thoroughly creeped out, we left the valley. Our mission debrief officially reads that we do not recommend using the southern passes due to constrained maneuverability, but none of us ever wanted to see that valley again.
A Leo story. Called to do a welfare check at a local home. The 58-year-old guy who owns the house has not talked to his kids in a week. Arrive on scene at 11 p.m. with one other officer and begin to knock on a door. No answer. Begin to look around the outside of the house. The house is huge and the lot is about 50 acres. Find the door unlocked on the porch and go inside calling out his name. I hear a lot of growling and what sounds like yelling. More insane noises coming from different parts of the house. Start moving towards the noises. Enter one part of the house that is pitch black. See a giant cage. Gun out. The loud noise causes me to turn toward the cage. Almost blast a chimpanzee with 230-gram HSTs. Freaked out, so I backed out. A tiger roaring in a cage in the hallway. The jungle animals all over the house. I hear a guy yelling and see a naked man coming down the stairs. It's the homeowner. WTF am I seeing? I got the hell out of that house and got my rifle just in case. Turns out the dude went on some huge heroin binge for a week and decided not to tell anyone or put on clothes. The animals were all legally owned and the guy was a vet or something that treated them for certain diseases or some shit, then sent them back to zoos or refugees. Not such an interesting story to tell, but Jesus Christ, I thought it was the island of Dr. Monroe or some shit, was absolutely ready to wrench some zoo animals.
Be sheriff's deputy in a rural county. Mainly deal with petty shit. The day mostly consists of shooting the shit. Sheriff in the mornings at a local diner. Partner during the day for most of the shift. Random bros when we see them. Calls are almost always related to some asshole's dog getting out and attacking livestock, or a good normal doggo just sniffing around where he shouldn't be on this one woman's property, Mrs. Rayleigh. One day I got a call from a 10 out of 10 cutie pie kindergarten teacher. She thinks that something is going on with the family next door. Go with a partner to perform a welfare check. Upon entering the house, end up finding toddlers with bruises covered in feces. The oldest kid looks like he's about to die. And that's why I quit, am a Neet, and drink and play vidya all day now.
Did you at least beat the parents?
I've been day drinking. I normally don't talk about it. Parents are both in jail, kids went to foster care, and none of us laid a finger on the parents. We wanted everything to be airtight. I moved in with my grandparents after I quit. Sheriff still calls me from time to check in on me. The thing is that the girl I was dating shortly before all this happened had been pregnant, and we lost the baby. Seeing what could have been and how other people treated those kids just got me real fucked up.
Cut out the drinking while you can. I watched the last few years evaporate under an assortment of cans and beer bottles to deal with some chronic pain. Fixed pain mostly, but now have a low-grade booze habit and have days of nightmares when I quit. Looking to start dialing it back and move forward. Good on you for not going full Cole Kurtz on the deadbeats.
Well, going through my grandpa's tornado shelter after he died was interesting. My dirtbag uncle got there before me, but he was an Air Force mechanic during and after World War II and worked for the airlines practically up until the day he died. He clearly was swiping stuff, or at least taking home the stuff that was going to be scrapped. This is the Midwest, so he had this huge barn-sized machine shop at home, but under the original farmhouse in the old brick basement, he kept other machine shop stuff. The story is that he used the run-down, crappy house for storage, but it was clear that he built things in there too. It's hard to imagine, but a 100-plus-year-old basement that was never wired for power is hardly covenant when you have a 1,000-plus square foot semi-professional shop within sight. This was his hoarder hole. All right, the point of the story. Of course, as there were old guns, all his old valuable surplus stuff was swiped by my uncle. It's a point of contention, but there was old German/Russian surplus ammo all rotten out. But my uncle claims it was just Duran's. Bullshit. Uncle Mike looted everything, but he left just enough to be suspicious as hell. I'm not sure what he was making. He had a normal machine shop. If this was just a scam, he could do pretty much anything without being bothered upstairs. My theory. He was a big-time hoarder and kept stuff that was once allowed, but now is a controlled substance. I found dynamite and stump remover in his tool shed, but that shit is common for old farmers. I'm thinking he was working on some kind of crazy old man engine/jet/rocket project that used some kind of illegal ass fuel. I think guns are a red herring. My uncle stealing them just made me want to look harder. He could have built box steel Brens upstairs with no one around for miles to notice. This was 2004 or 5. I'm guessing he shut down shop in the face of all the NSA Homeland stuff going on, but couldn't help himself to actually throw things away.
Mexican here, since most of the country is pretty Catholic. The cartels are too. Nazario Moreno, former leader of the Michoacan family cartel, was a priest. They even become the Knights Templar cartel, both heavily involved in meth trafficking and both operated like a sort of cult, where each member was given a Bible-like guideline that ordered them to have honor, humbleness, respect, and such. Of course, it's all bullshit since most of them lived luxurious lives and often blackmailed, kidnapped, and killed the general population. Pick-related is one of the leader's daughters. The degeneracy of these people disgust me, and I thank God every day I don't live in the cartel-controlled or more dangerous zones. Also, the worshipping of the Santa Muerte is common, but not as common as the media shows it, probably because it goes against some Catholic beliefs. The one figure that is actually common is Jesus Malverde, a Mexican Robin Hood. He is the patron saint of dealers, smugglers, and criminals in general.
My first dead body was interesting. Call out about a dead guy. The wife came home from a weekend trip to find her husband dead. Dispatch mentions he was ill. I was in field training at the time. My field training officer figured it'd be a good starter dead body call since it hadn't been rotting in the house for days, and the guy, we assumed, died from natural causes. Foreshadowing. Show up, wife is outside hysterical with neighbors surrounding her trying to comfort her. Walk in, weird smell throughout the house. She said he was in the chair in the backroom study. Go into backroom study, field training officer has me go in first. Holy shit, this dude blew his head off. Car pistol still in his hand. The bullet didn't penetrate his skull. The skull was deformed from the shot. Fairly clean, actually, but hell, that was not what we were expecting. Turns out the dude was dying from decades of alcohol abuse. Decided to take himself out before the painful ending while his wife was gone for the weekend. Turned it over to the coroner and detectives, wrote up my incident report, and noped the hell out of there. And that's why you always ask dispatch to clarify what kind of death you're rolling into before you get there.
Why in the ever-loving hell would he plan that, and not have the consideration to have someone else be the one to find him, rather than his wife?
What an asshole. Imagine doing that to your wife.
Not weird or really troubling, but I've bought various relics from different battlefields. I'd say the most that's creepy things I have are a blue enamel grenade string pull and bakelite rifling band from a German rifle grenade, which were dug up at the Mazy Battery in Normandy. They had them in a box with the usual rusted-up casings, etc. for €1 each. Great place. I think the only reason I find them creepy is because at the Battery they have some historical pictures of it after the fighting where you can see dead bodies, so I can visualize it all more easily than if I just bought them from some dude. So for interesting things I found searching houses, I've got 2 vaguely K-related, but neither were found by me. The first happened after my grandmother died. My dad was helping my uncle clear out the house prior to sale and found a picture related but apparently converted for 22 short blanks. The reason this is weird rather than, oh, grandpa just had a shitty single shot, is that my family are pretty anti-gun, and that my grandpa never had a reason to own it, so it's not really the sort of thing expected to be just laying around. The second interesting thing was found by my girlfriend who, for context, lives in Poland. She was searching through a cabinet in her house one day and found some original Solidarity news leaflets from 1981. She gave them to me since she knows I'm more interested in this stuff and she'd just throw them out. She found a 1983 5 kopecks coin as well, which was neat. Hope I'm not imposing for posting things I didn't find myself, but I felt these are all appropriate. All.
Be a cop. Get called out to back up probation officers at an apartment. Girl was supposed to be living alone and subject to random searches as part of her drug treatment. Home has 3 other girls and 2 guys all living with her. Was an obvious red flag. Get there and meet with P and P guy. Another guy from my department and a sergeant shows up. Think the boss was bored. Go inside and the probation officer starts his thing. Girls are obviously doing cam girl work. Makeshift studio in the living room. Props. 2 cameras. Computers. My sergeant thinks he's helping when he finds something. Picks it up, proudly starts waving it around, and starts giving this girl the riot act, thinking he found drug paraphernalia. It was clearly a glass toy. Literally gets laughed out of the apartment by everyone. Left-hand sanitizer and pictures of toys in his mailbox for weeks.
So this isn't a story about the search of a house, rather a search of the birthing. We'll call the subject here Ken. I've written stories about Ken before on 4chan, but this one by far is one of my favorites. We were both in school together for cook shit, and eventually we got stationed on the same ship together. Well, after in dock and getting hazed and all that, we finally settled into our racks and had our stuff all squared away. Immediately, Ken throws a fit. His laptop is gone. He tells our senior chief someone stole it. All the chiefs come down and give everyone a long talk and tell us essentially in their big dick voices, if that laptop is not back in his rack in 10 minutes, we'll be doing a goddamned health and comfort inspection. Then all y'all screwed. We spent 10 minutes searching for it. Nobody could find it, and everybody claimed they didn't steal it. That said, I trusted most of these people. Everyone in my birthing were good guys. Some of them were assholes, but none of them were thieves. The chiefs came back down and began searching everyone's stuff. During that, our senior chief had the first stroke of genius in his life. His alpha rhinoceros brain was firing at its highest setting. He decided to search Ken's rack, and lo and behold, amongst all the dry and stained underwear, mucus-crusted shirts and pants, and amongst his ridiculous amount of games and toys was the laptop, hidden underneath all his stuff. His only response to getting chewed out was, "I don't know, Chief." Ken later ended himself due to various other circumstances, given he couldn't actually keep up with the work and such. I have an old cap someone made of the story thread if anyone wants it. Be me, nerdy 22-year-old former Neet. Leech in the Navy, got re-rated CS, aka cook. Uncle Sam doesn't trust idiots like me with submarines. Go to Navy cook school. This is where I met Ken for the first time. The moment I met Ken, I knew. I knew it's his destiny to ruin my life. Nobody in the world could be so autistic. He couldn't even pass any of his tests. All of them were fudged by the teacher. And besides all that, he loved to try to talk crap about other people. Make them feel super shitty about themselves. Not only stupid, but a grade A asshole. By some blessing of fate, at the end of school, he was coming to my command with me. He would try to treat me like his friend because he had none, and he clung to me. I would not allow my Navy to be poisoned by such foolishness. Could anyone blame me for what I was planning? More? Ken didn't make it easy on himself, to say the least. First day out to sea, a casualty was called away. Ken sounded like a full-grown toddler. Was that real? He looked like he was about to freak out, like we were going full battle stations or something. Everyone lost it, not a single person took him seriously, and I hadn't needed to do a damn thing. A simple comment was enough to make him feel stupid. I spoke smugly. "Ken, are you kidding me? 2 weeks later, start taking Ken aside every time he screws up. Make him feel absolutely horrible without really saying he's stupid. Ken, why did you do that? You should know better. What's wrong with you? No, Ken, I'm just disappointed. I thought you were better than that. I can't even look you in the face right now, Ken. You ruined that entire meal. It's working. His confidence is shattered. He is falling slowly into a pit of despair. His performance just gets worse and worse each day. And his lack of intelligence keeps him from realizing it's almost all me. Behind his back, I'm spreading all the stories I have of him. The time he asked a naval officer in uniform, "Are you Marines?" The time he screamed in front of the Royal Omanian Police, "I don't trust these people." The time he gave me a second-degree burn on my hand, which I never let him forget. Even the little things like his inability to distinguish between where he grew up and where he was born. 4 weeks in, everything's coming together. The rumors and stories are flying. Everyone sees him as nothing more than a waste of space. He's the joke of the ship, and it's a pretty damn bad joke. Most people treat him with contempt or at the very most the patience of a squirrel. We never put him on useful jobs, everyone implying he is useless. Finally, the day has come. Ken is no longer in the galley. I ask my watch captain, "What happened to Ken?" "I'm not sure. I was told he wasn't coming in anymore." Start asking around. At this point, pretty sure he messed up so bad he's getting kicked. So feeling pretty good overall. Finally hear about him from the captain over the 1MC, ship-wide loudspeaker. "I'm sorry to say, but one of our shipmates self-terminated himself last night. Our HMs tried to save him, but he was too far gone to save. Let us have a moment of silence for culinary specialist Anan Ken." Never saw Ken again.
Not my story, but was told this 3-ish months ago by Leo friend that responded to it. Wellness check called in. Show up. Guy answers the door. Explain the visit. Guy says fuck off. Ask him where his spouse is. Says she left. Less than a minute later, she scuttles out a hallway to the kitchen in the back to get some ice for her shiner. Explain to him that lying is bad and ask Mrs. what happened to her eye. Dude chimes in before she lets a word out. Tell asshole nobody was talking to him. She explains he hit her over an argument about work clothes and money for detergent. Ask her to walk us through the story. The guy gets taken outside. She walks back to the garage laundry room to explain the story. Walking down the hallway and an open door catches the corner of his eye while passing by. Looks like a bad Dragon Armory. Racks upon racks on the walls, stacked with 200 of them. More dragon than wall. Taken aback for a second. Mrs. notices and kindly explains that it's her husband's room, and then closes the door and finishes heading to the garage.
Found a dead horse stuff in a well once. Be a kid tromping through woods. Find an old well inside the shed for some reason. Old plywood board across well. Pull it up because of kid logic. See a freshly dead horse. Nope, out of there. Run home. What's weird is there weren't any horses anywhere near where I lived. And why would someone stuff it down a well? I'm wondering if maybe it was a deer. Was in a populated area of West Virginia, but there are literally tons of deer everywhere there.
In a sandbox, cordon and search on a suspected bomb maker. Get the drop on him while he and his family were sleeping. Move the family to their living room while we search the place. Find detonators, copper wiring, cleaning supplies, and other shit to make HMEs, etc. Come across a secret cabinet in the dude's closet. Slowly check it for booby traps and open it. It's not HMEs, it's not weapons, it's pornos, a shit ton of pornos. It's like he had a whole rack from a sex shop in there. Everyone lols. One of the specialists suddenly grabs a handful of the DVD. Lol, the hell you gonna do with that? This! Runs into the living room with the porn, dumps it all on the bomb maker. Hey, kids, your daddy is a pervert. Squad leader is pissed, everyone else is laughing. The kids are confused. The bomb maker looks like he wants us to just shoot him now and get it over with. His wife looks like she's gonna do it herself if we don't detain him. Detain the bomb maker. Everyone gets an ass chewing when we get back to the forward operating base. Find out later that the specialist from earlier took some of the DVDs with him. Pick related. The dude had a real thing for Jenna Hayes.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.
There's also a Rumble archive as a backup.